After decades of sending signals into the darkness of space, humanity finally got an answer. The massive radio telescopes in New Mexico picked up the transmission first, a series of precise mathematical sequences that couldn't possibly be random noise. Within hours, every major observatory on Earth confirmed it. The pattern repeated, growing stronger, heading toward Earth. Humanity wasn't alone in the universe. Commander Frank Miller stood at the window of the International Space Station, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath him. At 52, with gray beginning to show in his dark hair, he had spent most of his career preparing for this moment. Now that it had arrived, he felt strangely calm. "They're approaching the lunar orbit, sir," said Lieutenant Grace Wilson, her voice steady despite the historic nature of the moment. "Estimated arrival in 30 minutes. Frank nodded. "Is the welcome committee ready?" "Yes, sir. Everyone is in position." The welcome committee consisted of representatives from 12 nations, the finest diplomats, scientists, and military personnel humanity had to offer. Frank had been chosen to lead them not because he was the smartest or the strongest, but because he understood people. The brass hoped that skill might extend to understanding aliens, too. The Valdorian ship appeared first as a bright point of light, distinguishable from the stars only by its movement. As it drew closer, its true form became apparent. A massive vessel shaped like a spear, gleaming with a metal unknown to Earth science. It moved with impossible grace for something so large, coming to a perfect stop 3 kilometers from the space station. "They're hailing us," Grace said. Frank straightened his uniform, put them through. The screen filled with an alien face. The Valdorian had purple-gray skin that looked as tough as leather, with ridges where a human would have eyebrows. Its eyes were solid violet with no visible pupils. And when it opened its mouth, Frank saw rows of small, sharp teeth. "I am War Chief Zorax of the 7th Fleet." The alien said in perfect English. They had learned the language from Earth's broadcasts. "We come to evaluate your species." Frank introduced himself and welcomed the Valdorians to Earth's solar system. Pleasantries were exchanged, though the aliens seemed impatient with the ritual. They requested permission to send a delegation to the space station. "We would be honored," Frank replied. An hour later, 5 Valdorians stood in the station's largest chamber. In person, they were even more imposing than on screen. The smallest stood over 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders and limbs corded with muscle beneath their armored skin. They wore minimal clothing, simple harnesses that supported various devices and weapons. War Chief Zorax stepped forward. Up close, Frank could see intricate patterns in the alien skin, possibly natural markings or perhaps some form of cultural decoration. "Your species has sent signals into space for many cycles," Zorax said. "We have watched your development with interest." "We're happy to finally make contact," Frank said. "We have much to learn from each other." Zorax made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Perhaps, though we have observed that your species is physically limited." One of the other Valdorians, introduced as Science Director Kellner, approached Dr. Ellen Foster, the mission's chief biologist. Without asking permission, the alien took Ellen's arm and examined it, pressing against the muscle and skin. "So soft," Kellner said. "How do you survive impacts or temperature extremes?" Ellen gently but firmly reclaimed her arm. "We've adapted to our environment over millions of years. We may not have exoskeletons like yours, but we're quite resilient in our own way." "That remains to be seen," Zorax said. "We have come because there's a threat approaching, one that has consumed 12 worlds already. We seek allies with strength, with potential." The room grew quiet. This was the first mention of any threat. "What kind of threat?" Frank asked. "The kind that devours all life," Zorax replied. "We call them the Void Swarm. They move from system to system, consuming all biological matter, then move on. They cannot be reasoned with. They can only be fought." Science Director Kellner added, "We have formed an alliance of strong species to combat this threat. We seek to determine if humanity deserves inclusion." Frank noticed a choice of words. Deserves, not qualifies for. These aliens thought in hierarchical terms. "And how do you propose to evaluate us?" he asked. Zorax's violet eyes seemed to glow brighter. Combat trials, of course. Your strongest warriors against ours. Tests of endurance, strength, and tactical thinking. Frank exchanged glances with Colonel Patricia Martinez, head of station security. Her expression remained professional, but he knew she was calculating the odds. Humans would be at a severe disadvantage in direct physical competitions with these giants. We appreciate the offer, Frank said carefully, but we might suggest more varied tests. Humans excel in many areas beyond physical combat, such as, Zorax asked, an edge of dismissal in his voice. Problem-solving, adaptation, endurance of a different kind. We've survived on Earth despite not being the strongest species on our planet. This seemed to surprise the Valdorians. Kellner tilted her head. You are not the apex predators of your world. Patricia stepped forward. Depends on how you define apex. We're not the strongest or the fastest, but we're still here. Interesting, Zorax said, though he didn't sound impressed. Nevertheless, strength is what will be needed against the Void Swarm. We will establish a base on your planet to conduct our evaluation. We prefer harsh conditions. Desert regions would be suitable. The Valdorians weren't really asking permission, Frank noted. They were informing. We can arrange something in Australia, he offered. Parts of the outback would probably meet your requirements. Excellent. We will descend in 3 of your days. Prepare your finest warriors. Zorax looked around the station once more. Your technology is primitive, but functional. Perhaps there is potential here. After the Valdorians returned to their ship, the human team gathered to discuss the encounter. They're not what I expected, Ellen said, so focus on physical prowess. Did you see their skin? Patricia added, I'm pretty sure it's not just tough. It's some kind of natural armor. Frank nodded. They see us as weak because we're smaller and our skin is softer. But they're missing something important. What's that? Grace asked. Earth is one of the most competitive environments imaginable. We don't have the strongest bite or the sharpest claws, but we share our planet with creatures that do. We've learned to respect dangers that come in all sizes. Dr. Alan Rodriguez, the team's xenobiologists, have been quiet until now. I'm more concerned about their dismissive attitude. They clearly consider themselves superior. Pride before the fall, Patricia muttered. Exactly, Frank said. And that might be our advantage. They're underestimating us and Earth. 3 days later, the Valdorian ship descended through Earth's atmosphere with fiery display visible across half the continent. It landed precisely at the coordinates provided in the Australian outback, sending up a cloud of red dust that could be seen for miles. Frank was there to greet them, along with a carefully selected team. Captain Alicia Wright stood by his side, her experience as both a Marine and a biologist making her the perfect liaison for the visitors. Zorax emerged from the ship, followed by 20 Valdorian warriors. Each was taller and broader than the last, until a final figure ducked through the doorway. This Valdorian stood at least 10 feet tall, with skin that shimmered with metallic highlights and arms as thick as tree trunks. This is Drazak, Zorax announced with obvious pride. The unconquerable. He has never been defeated in combat across 17 star systems. Drazak surveyed the humans with an expression that could only be described as disappointment. His gaze lingered on Alicia, who stared back without flinching. These are your warriors. Drazak's voice rumbled like distant thunder. They are so small. Size isn't everything, Alicia replied evenly. Drazak laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. A common saying among the diminutive, I imagine. Frank stepped forward. We prepared accommodation for your team and areas for whatever tests you'd like to conduct. But first, I should warn you about some of the local wildlife. Wildlife? Zorax repeated the word, as if it were amusing. We have studied your planet's creatures. None pose a threat to Valdorians. As if on cue, a small brown snake slithered across the red dirt near the landing site. Drazak moved with surprising speed for his size, stomping on the snake with a massive foot. When he lifted it, the snake was crushed. See? No threat, he said. Alicia winced. That was an eastern brown snake. Second most venomous snake on the planet. One bite can kill a human in under an hour. Drazak looked unimpressed. Venom that affects humans would be meaningless against our biology. Our blood chemistry is entirely different. Frank noticed Alicia and Alan exchange glances. The Valdorians were making assumptions about Earth life based on their experiences on other worlds. Dangerous assumptions. Perhaps, Frank said, but we've learned to respect even our smallest creatures. It's helped us survive. Zorax waved a dismissive hand. Enough talk. We will begin the evaluation tomorrow. Prepare your champions. As the Valdorians moved toward their new base, Frank held back with his team. They're not going to listen to warnings about wildlife, are they? Alan asked quietly. Frank shook his head. No, they believe they're invulnerable. They might learn otherwise, Alicia said, watching as a small spider crawled across a nearby rock. Earth has a way of teaching respect. The sun set over the outback, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. The Valdorians stood outside their ship, admiring the view. They had no idea that all around them, in burrows and crevices and hidden places, the smallest and deadliest creatures on Earth were stirring. The morning sun beat down on the red earth of the Australian outback. Heat rose in visible waves from the ground. For the humans, it was uncomfortable despite their climate-controlled uniforms. For the Valdorians, it seemed to be invigorating. This reminds me of our summer training grounds, Drazak said, stretching his massive limbs, though perhaps a bit cool. Captain Alicia Wright raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. The temperature had already reached 105 degrees Fahrenheit, and it wasn't even midday. The Valdorians had set up a series of challenge courses overnight. Massive structures of metal and stone now stood where there had been only empty desert the day before. Their technology was impressive. They had literally shaped the earth to create obstacles, pits, and climbing walls. Today we begin the physical trials. War Chief Zorax announced to gather humans and aliens. First, tests of speed and strength. Then endurance. Finally, combat skills. Frank Miller looked at the human team they'd assembled. Elite soldiers from around the world, Olympic athletes, and survival experts. All of them looked small and fragile next to the Valdorians, but they had other strengths. Alicia had been assigned as the primary liaison to the aliens. Her background in both military operations and biology made her uniquely qualified. Now she stepped forward. Before we begin, I'd like to suggest some safety precautions. The outback contains many hazards that might not be obvious. Zach made that grinding rock laugh again, always with the warnings about tiny creatures. Your concern is noted but unnecessary. The first challenge was a race across rough terrain. The course stretched for 3 miles over rocks, sand, and scrubland. 3 Valdorians would compete against 3 humans. The humans had chosen wisely, a long-distance runner from Kenya, a parkour expert from Brazil, and a former Navy SEAL. They wore lightweight gear designed for the heat and carried water. The Valdorians wore nothing but their minimal harnesses, their tough skin exposed to the elements. At the signal, they were off. The Valdorians took an early lead, their long legs covering ground quickly. But as the race continued under the brutal sun, something unexpected happened. The Valdorians began to slow. Their cooling systems must be different from ours, Alan Rodriguez whispered to Frank as they watched through binoculars. They're overheating. The Kenyan runner took the lead at the 2-mile mark, moving with steady efficiency. The Valdorians pushed harder, their competitive nature driving them, but their movements became less coordinated. One stumbled over a rock that would have been easily avoided earlier. The human team finished first, second, and fourth. Only one Valdorian managed to beat the SEAL, and even then just barely. War Chief Zorax was not pleased. The heat affects us differently than anticipated. This is not a fair test of ability. Your warriors said this reminded them of your training grounds. Frank pointed out, perhaps you underestimated our environment. Zorax's violet eyes narrowed. The next challenge will be different. The strength tests were more predictable. Humans could not match Valdorians for raw power. The aliens lifted boulders that would take 3 men to move. They bent metal bars with their bare hands. They punched through thick wooden boards as if they were paper. This is more like it, Drazak boasted after shattering a concrete block with his fist. This is where warriors prove their worth. But even here, there were surprises. In tests of grip strength and finger dexterity, the humans performed far better. A rock climber from Colorado demonstrated techniques that the bulky Valdorians couldn't match, scaling a sheer cliff face that left the aliens struggling. Different kind of strength. Alicia explained when Kellner questioned the results. Humans evolved to use tools and climb trees. Our hands are designed for precision as well as power. The day wore on. The Valdorians won most of the raw strength competitions, while humans showed better endurance and adaptability. Neither side had a clear overall advantage. As the sun began to set, Zorax called for the final challenge of the day, a demonstration of combat techniques. This would not be actual fighting between species. That would come later. For now, each group would show their methods against training dummies and in controlled sparring matches among their own kind. The humans went first. They demonstrated a variety of martial arts: karate, jiu-jitsu, boxing, wrestling. The focus was on technique rather than power, using an opponent's strength against them. The Valdorians watched with mild interest, but seemed unimpressed. Then it was their turn. The aliens moved with surprising speed for their size. Their fighting style was direct and brutal, focused on overwhelming force. When Drazak sparred with another Valdorian, the impact of their blows created small shock waves that could be felt by the watching humans. Impressive, Frank admitted, but predictable, Patricia Martinez added quietly. They rely on being bigger and stronger than their opponents. Not much finesse. As the demonstration continued, a small commotion broke out near the back of a human group. A soldier jumped back suddenly, pointing at the ground. "Funnel web spider," he called out. "Nobody move." The warning spread quickly among the humans, who gave the area a wide berth. The spider was black and about 2 inches across, moving with purpose across the red dirt. Drazak paused his demonstration, noticing the humans' reaction. "Another of your deadly creatures?" he asked mockingly. Alan stepped forward. Sydney funnel web spider, one of the most venomous spiders on Earth. Its bite can kill a human in as little as 15 minutes without treatment. Drazak looked at the small creature with disdain. "And you fear this tiny thing?" "Respect, not fear," Alicia corrected. "There's a difference." Drazak walked over to where the spider had stopped. It raised its front legs in a defensive posture, fangs visible. The massive alien warrior towered over it, a giant facing a speck. "Watch," he said to the gathered crowd. "I will show you how a true warrior deals with such threats." Before anyone could stop him, Drazak reached down with one finger, intending to crush the spider. But the funnel web was faster. It lunged and bit the alien's finger before he could complete the motion. Drazak straightened up, looking at the tiny puncture marks on his gray-purple skin. He seemed more amused and concerned. "See? No effect. Your deadly creatures are not so deadly to us." He casually stepped on the spider, ending its life. Alicia and Alan exchanged worried glances. "You should let our medical team check that bite," Alicia suggested. Drazak waved her off. "Unnecessary. Our biology is far different from yours. What harms humans does nothing to Valdorians." The demonstrations concluded, and both groups returned to their respective bases. The humans gathered in their command center, discussing the day's events. "They're physically superior in most ways," Patricia said. "But they're arrogant. That's a weakness we can exploit." "I'm more concerned about Drezik's bite," Alan replied. "Funnel web venom is a complex neurotoxin. We have no idea how it might affect Valdorian physiology." Frank nodded. "Keep monitoring the situation. But don't push the issue unless they ask for help. They need to learn to respect our warnings on their own terms." At the Valdorian camp, Drazak sat outside, looking up at the stars. The bite on his finger had begun to itch, but he paid it no mind. Such a tiny creature could not possibly harm the mightiest warrior of the Valdorian fleet. Next to him, Science Director Kellner was reviewing data from the day's competitions. "The humans performed better than expected in several categories," she noted. "Their adaptability is impressive." "They are still weak," Drazak replied. "In true combat, they would stand no chance against us." "Perhaps," Kellner said, "but there is something about them that seems resilient." They survived on a planet with all these venomous creatures you dismiss so easily. Drazak flexed his hand, noticing that the muscles felt oddly stiff. Probably just fatigue from the day's activities. Tomorrow we begin the wilderness survival challenges, he said. That will be the true test. The night deepened. In the Valdorian camp, most had gone to sleep. Drazak remained awake, troubled by a strange sensation spreading from his hand up his arm. The bite area had turned a darker purple, and the surrounding skin felt hot to the touch. He would not show weakness by complaining of such a minor discomfort. He was Drazak the Unconquerable. He had survived the acid storms of Nexar Prime and the crushing depths of the Mariana Trench during earlier tests on Earth. A spider bite was nothing. In the human camp, Alicia sat at her computer, researching funnel web spider venom and comparing notes with Alan. The problem is, we have no baseline for Valdorian physiology, she said. No way to predict how the venom might affect them. They should have let us examine the bite, Alan replied. Their overconfidence could be dangerous. Alicia looked out the window toward the alien camp. They'll learn. I just hope it's not the hard way. As dawn approached, Drazak finally admitted himself that something was wrong. His entire arm had gone numb, and he was having trouble controlling his breathing. Sweat beaded on his armored skin, and his vision blurred at the edges. With great reluctance, he made his way to Kellner's quarters. "The spider," he said simply when she opened the door. "I think I need help." Kellner's eyes widened as she looked at his condition. Without a word, she activated her communicator. "War Chief, we have a situation. Send for the human medical team immediately." As the first light of day touched the horizon, an urgent message reached the human camp. The Valdorians were requesting emergency medical assistance. Their strongest warrior had fallen ill. Earth's smallest defender had drawn first blood. The human medical team rushed into the Valdorian camp as the morning sun cast long shadows across the red earth. Dr. Lisa Cooper led the group, carrying advanced medical equipment and anti-venom kits. She had been briefed on the situation, but knew they were entering unknown territory. No human doctor had ever treated an alien patient before. They found Drazak lying on a metal platform in the Valdorian medical bay. His normally gray-purple skin had taken on a sickly blue tinge. The area around the bite was swollen and dark, almost black. His massive chest rose and fell in shallow, rapid breaths. War Chief Zorak stood nearby, his posture rigid with concern. "Fix him," he commanded rather than asked. Lisa approached carefully, her medical training kicking in despite the unusual patient. "I need to understand his symptoms and how they progressed. When did they start?" Science Director Kellner answered. He reported numbness in extremities first, then difficulty breathing. His heart rate increased dramatically 2 hours ago, and he lost consciousness 30 minutes before your arrival. "Classic neurotoxin symptoms," Lisa murmured. She turned to Alicia Wright, who had accompanied the medical team. Similar to human reactions, but the progression seemed slower. "That might give us an advantage," Alicia replied. "More time to treat him." Lisa carefully examined the bite wound. The puncture marks were tiny, just like they would be on a human victim. But the surrounding tissue reaction was extreme. The venom was breaking down Valdorian tissue in ways she hadn't expected. "I need to know more about your physiology," Lisa said to Kellner. "Blood composition, nervous system structure, how your bodies process toxins." Kellner hesitated, looking at Zorax. Sharing such information would reveal potential weaknesses of their species. "Without this information, we can't help him effectively," Alicia added. "The funnel web venom attacks nerve synapses in humans. We need to know if your systems work similarly." After a tense moment, Zorax nodded. "Show them." Kellner activated a holographic display that showed detailed Valdorian anatomy. Lisa and her team studied it intently, comparing to what they knew about human systems and spider venom pathways. "Their nervous system is more complex than ours," Lisa noted, "but the basic principles are similar. The venom is likely attacking the nerve junctions here and here." She pointed to areas on the hologram. "Can your anti-venom help?" Zorax asked. "Possibly, but it's designed for human biology. We'd need to modify it. Lisa turned to one of her colleagues. Get samples back to the lab immediately. We need to synthesize a Valdorian-compatible version. While part of the team rushed back to human base with samples, Lisa stabilized Drazak as best she could. She administered medications to support his breathing and heart function, carefully adjusted for his alien physiology. Will he survive? Zorax asked bluntly. Lisa met his violet eyes. I don't know, but we're doing everything possible. Back at the Human Command Center, Frank Miller received updates on the situation. The planned wilderness challenges had been postponed indefinitely. The Valdorians were shaken by the sudden vulnerability of their champion. They never expected this, Frank said to Patricia Martinez. They thought their physical superiority made them invincible. Earth doesn't work that way, Patricia replied. The most dangerous things here aren't always the biggest. Dr. Alan Rodriguez rushed into the room, excitement visible on his face despite the serious situation. We have something. The lab team has modified the antivenom. They think it will work on Valdorian physiology. Get it to them immediately, Frank ordered. The modified antivenom arrived at the Valdorian camp within the hour. Lisa prepared the injection carefully, aware that she was making medical history, the first human doctor to treat an alien patient. This might help neutralize the venom, she explained to Kellner and Zorax. But I have to be honest, we're still working with limited information about how your bodies will respond. Proceed, Zorax said. The usual arrogance was gone from his voice, replaced by concern for his warrior. Lisa injected the antivenom directly into Drezik's arm. Everyone watched intently for any reaction. For several minutes, nothing seemed to change. Then, gradually, his breathing became less labored. The monitors Kellner had set up showed his heart rate beginning to stabilize. It's working, Lisa said, relief evident in her voice. But he's not out of danger yet. The venom has already caused damage that will take time to heal. As the day progressed, Drezik's condition slowly improved. He remained unconscious, but his vital signs strengthened. The human medical team worked in shifts, monitoring his progress and making adjustments to his treatment. While this drama unfolded, a small group of Valdorian scouts decided to continue their exploration of the Australian outback. Despite the warnings from both their leaders and the humans, they ventured into the wilderness without protective gear. We cannot show weakness now, said Krozak, the leader of the scouts. We must prove our superiority over this planet. The 4 Valdorians moved through the scrubland, scanning the environment and collecting samples. They recorded everything they saw, determined to understand this world that had managed to bring down their mightiest warrior with something as insignificant as a spider. They came to a small waterhole, one of the few in this arid region. Animals would gather here, making it an ideal place to observe Earth's wildlife. The scouts set up a blind and waited. These creatures all seemed so fragile, observed one scout named Vrelner. How did they survive to evolve on such a hostile world? Adaptation, replied Krozak. Each has found its niche, but none have achieved true dominance as we have on our world. A group of kangaroos approached the waterhole cautiously. The Valdorians watched with interest as the animals drank, their movements alert for any sign of danger. Fascinating locomotion, Vrelner noted. Efficient for this terrain. Suddenly, the kangaroos froze, then bounded away rapidly. The Valdorians tensed, wondering what frightened the animals. There! Krozak pointed to a ripple in the water. Some kind of predator? A dark shape moved beneath the surface. Curious, Krozak moved closer to the edge of the water. The shape grew larger, then exploded upward in a spray of water. A saltwater crocodile, 16 feet long and weighing over 1,000 pounds, lunged at the alien. Its massive jaws clamped down on Krozak's arm with crushing force. The Valdorian roared in pain and surprise as the crocodile began its death roll, attempting to drag him into the water. The other scouts rushed to help, striking at the reptile with their weapons. But the crocodile's hide was tough, evolved over millions of years to withstand attacks. It maintained its grip on Krozak, who was now half submerged in the muddy water. With a tremendous effort, 2 scouts managed to pry the crocodile's jaws open enough for Krozak to pull free. His arm was mangled, the armor like skin torn and bleeding. The crocodile slipped back into the water, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Back to camp. Vrellner ordered. He needs medical attention. They carried their wounded comrade back toward the Valdorian base, moving as fast as they could over the rough terrain. Krozak was losing blood rapidly, and his wounded arm had already begun to swell. When they arrived at the camp, they found it still focused on Drezik's treatment. Now, they had a second emergency. Lisa Cooper looked up from Drezik's bedside to see the new patient being carried in. "What happened?" she asked, moving quickly to examine the wounded Valdorian. "Water predator," Vrellner explained. "Large reptile with many teeth." "Crocodile," Alicia said, her voice flat. "We warned you about the water holes." Lisa examined the wound with growing concern. "The tissue damage is severe. And there's something else. The wound is already showing signs of infection. Crocodile mouths contain numerous bacteria that can cause serious infections. Our bodies can fight off any primitive Earth microbes," Krozak insisted through clenched teeth. "I wouldn't be so sure," Lisa replied. "Earth bacteria have been evolving alongside predators and prey for billions of years. Some have developed very effective strategies for overcoming immune responses." As if to punctuate her point, Krozak suddenly convulsed, his body temperature spiking dramatically. War Chief Zorax watched this new crisis unfold with growing concern. In the space of one day, his two finest warriors had been brought low by Earth creatures, one tiny enough to fit on a fingertip, the other a living fossil from an ancient time. He approached Frank Miller, who had arrived to check on the situation. "Your world," Zorax said quietly, "is not what we expected." Frank nodded. "Earth has been a battleground for billions of years. Every living thing here has been shaped by that struggle, including us." Zorax looked at his wounded warriors. "And humans have survived among these dangers without natural armor or superior strength. We survived because we learned to respect the dangers," Frank replied, "and because we worked together to overcome them." As night fell over the outback, the human and Valdorian medical teams worked side by side, fighting to save the alien warriors. Drezak had stabilized but remained unconscious. Krozak fought a raging infection that his body had never evolved to combat. In the darkness outside, countless creatures went about their business. Spiders spinning webs, snakes hunting in the cool night air, insects buzzing and crawling through the ancient landscape. Earth's smallest and most overlooked inhabitants, continuing the endless dance of survival that had shaped their world for eons. A world that had just taught the mighty Valdorians their first lesson in humility. Dawn broke over the outback, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. 3 days had passed since Drezik's encounter with the funnel web spider. The Valdorian base had transformed from a testing ground for human worthiness into a makeshift hospital. Drezak had finally regained consciousness the previous evening. He was weak, but recovering. The modified anti-venom had worked, though the mighty warrior would bear the scars of his encounter with Earth's tiny defender for the rest of his life. Krozak was not so fortunate. The infection from the crocodile bite had spread through his system rapidly. Despite the combined efforts of human and Valdorian medical teams, his condition was critical. His body fought against bacteria it had never encountered before, microbes that had evolved in Earth's competitive ecosystem for millions of years. War Chief Zorax stood outside the medical facility, watching the sunrise. Frank Miller approached, offering a cup of coffee. The Valdorian accepted it cautiously, sniffing the dark liquid before taking a sip. "Bitter," Zorax commented, "but stimulating." "Like many things on Earth," Frank replied. "Unpleasant at first, but useful once you understand it." They stood in silence for a moment, an alien warlord and a human commander finding common ground in concern for their people. "The challenges have been postponed indefinitely," Zorax finally said. "This was not the evaluation we planned." Frank nodded. "Sometimes the most important tests are the ones we don't plan for." Inside the medical bay, Dr. Lisa Cooper checked Drezik's vital signs. The massive alien warrior looked diminished somehow, humbled by his experience. His violet eyes followed her movements with new respect. "The venom," Drezak said, his voice rougher than before. "How does something so small carry something so powerful?" Lisa adjusted his medication drip before answering. Evolution. The spider doesn't need to be big when its venom can stop creatures many times its size. It's a matter of efficiency. On our world, the small creatures are just food for the large ones, Drazak said. Nothing like your funnel web. Earth is different, Lisa explained. Here, size isn't always a determining factor in survival. Sometimes it's speed or camouflage or venom, different solutions to the same problem, staying alive long enough to reproduce. Alicia right entered the room, carrying data tablets. She had been working with Science Director Kellner, comparing Earth biology with what they knew of other worlds. How's our patient? Alicia asked. Improving, Lisa replied. The tissue damage around the bite site is healing, and his nervous system is recovering. He should be able to move around soon, though I recommend limited activity for at least another week. Zach made a sound that might have been a snort. A week of weakness because of a creature I could crush with one finger. A creature you did crush, Alicia reminded him, after it showed you that size isn't everything. In another section of the medical bay, Krozak fought for his life. The infection from the crocodile bite had caused sepsis, a systemic inflammatory response that was overwhelming his body. The human doctors had administered powerful antibiotics, but they weren't sure if they would work on Valdorian physiology. Science Director Kellner monitored his condition alongside Dr. Alan Rodriguez. They had been working nonstop, trying to find a solution. His immune system is attacking the antibiotics along with the bacteria, Alan observed. It doesn't recognize the medication as helpful. Kellner's normally composed features showed signs of stress. Our bodies are designed to neutralize foreign substances automatically. It's a defense mechanism that has served us well on many worlds. But not on Earth, Alan said gently. Here, you might need help from substances your body doesn't recognize. Kellner was quiet for a moment, then said, We came to test your species' worthiness as allies. Instead, we find ourselves dependent on your knowledge to survive. That's what allies do, Alan replied. Help each other overcome challenges neither could face alone. Outside the medical facility, a new group of Aldorians had gathered. These were not warriors, but scientists and researchers who had arrived from their ship overnight. They carried equipment in sample containers, clearly intending to study the environment that had so unexpectedly challenged their species. Patricia Martinez watched them with narrowed eyes. They're collecting samples of everything. Plants, insects, soil, water. Knowledge. Frank said, They're finally realizing there's more to learn here than they thought. War Chief Zorax approached the human leaders. We have requested additional medical personnel from our fleet, and we wish to propose a new form of evaluation. What did you have in mind? Frank asked. A joint research mission. Your scientists and ours, working together to understand the biological hazards of your world. This seems more relevant than tests of physical strength. Frank smiled slightly. We'd be happy to help. Though I should warn you, we've been studying Earth's creatures for centuries, and they still surprise us. Later that day, Alicia led a small team of human and Valdorian scientists on a carefully controlled expedition into the outback. The aliens now wore protective gear modeled after human designs, but adapted for their larger forms. They moved with new caution, their earlier arrogance replaced by wary respect. This plant, Alicia said, pointing to a nondescript bush with small green leaves, is called the Gimpy Gimpy. It looks harmless, but its leaves are covered in tiny silica hairs that inject a powerful neurotoxin. The pain from touching it is so severe that horses have jumped off cliffs after contact. The pain can last for months or even years. The Valdorian scientists recorded this information, taking careful samples using long collection tools. And humans live among such things, asked one Valdorian researcher named Melnax. We learn what's dangerous and avoid it, Alicia explained, or find ways to use it. Many of our medicines come from plants and animals that would be deadly otherwise. They continued their survey, with Alicia pointing out countless hidden dangers, the blue-ringed octopus in tidal pools, the death adder concealed beneath fallen leaves, the box jellyfish in coastal waters. With each example, the Valdorians' data grew, and so did their understanding of what humans had adapted to survive among. Back at the base, Drazak had insisted on getting up despite Lisa's orders. He sat outside the medical facility, watching the sunset with new eyes. "Your world is beautiful," he said when Frank joined him. "Beautiful and deadly, like a weapon with an ornate design." "That's a warrior's perspective," Frank replied. "But not inaccurate." Drazak flexed his hand, where the spider bite had left a permanent darkening of his skin. "I have fought in 17 star systems. I have faced enemies with plasma cannons and gravity weapons. Never did I think my closest brush with death would come from a creature smaller than my eye." "Earth teaches humility," Frank said. "It taught humans long ago, and now it's teaching Valdorians." Inside the medical bay, a sudden commotion drew everyone's attention. Krozak had taken a turn for the worse. His body temperature was spiking dangerously high, and his breathing had become erratic. Lisa, Alan, and Kellner worked frantically, trying every treatment they could think of. The Valdoria medical team that had arrived from the ship joined them, bringing advanced technology from their world. "His system is shutting down," one of the Valdorian doctors reported. "The infection has spread too far." Lisa refused to give up. "We need to try something different. His immune system is fighting our antibiotics, so let's use that to our advantage." She quickly prepared a new treatment, a modified version of the bacteria from the crocodile's mouth, engineered to attack the harmful bacteria, while being recognizable to Krozak's immune system as an ally rather than a threat. "It's experimental," she warned, "but it might be his only chance." War Chief Zorax gave his approval with a solemn nod. "Proceed." The treatment was administered. Everyone watched the monitors anxiously, looking for any sign of improvement. For long minutes, nothing changed. Then, gradually, Krozak's readings began to stabilize. "It's working," Alan said quietly. "His immune system is accepting the modified bacteria and using them to fight the infection." Kellner looked at Lisa with new respect. "You use our own defensive mechanisms to save him. Ingenious." As night fell completely, news arrived from the Valdorian ship in orbit. The High Command had been informed of the situation on Earth. They were sending a full scientific delegation to study this dangerous but fascinating world. Frank, Alicia, and the other human leaders met with Zorax to discuss this development. "Your superiors still want alliance?" Frank asked. "More than ever," Zorax replied, "but not for the reasons we originally thought. Your world has something we lack, biological diversity and the knowledge to survive among it. The void swarm we face consumes all biological matter in its path. Your planet's defensive adaptations might be the key to stopping them." Alicia nodded. "From predator to prey to partner. That's quite a shift in perspective. Survival often requires adaptation," Zorax said, echoing what he had learned from humans, even for Valdorians. Outside, in the vast expanse of the Australian night, countless stars shone down on the ancient land. Somewhere among those stars lurked the void swarm, a threat to all life. But here on Earth, in the darkness, millions of years of evolution had created natural defenses that might save not just one world, but many, and it had all started with a single spider bite. 2 weeks had passed since Drezik's encounter with the funnel web spider. The Australian outback now hosted a sprawling complex of human and Valdorian structures. What had begun as a testing ground had evolved into a joint research facility. Scientists from both species worked side by side, studying Earth's unique biological defenses. Drazak stood near the edge of the camp, watching a group of researchers collect samples from a termite mound. His massive frame had recovered its strength, but something fundamental had changed in the warrior's violet eyes. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a thoughtful awareness. Alicia Wright approached, carrying equipment cases. "How's the arm?" she asked. Drazak flexed his hand, where the spider bite had left a permanent dark patch on his gray-purple skin. "Functional, though the feeling is not quite the same." "Nerve damage," Alicia nodded. "Even with our best treatments, some effects are permanent." "A reminder," Drazak said, "when I need it." They walked together toward a new structure at the center of the camp, a large dome where the most important joint project was underway. Inside, human and Valdorian scientists crowded around workstations filled with samples, data screens, and complex equipment. Dr. Lisa Cooper directed a team analyzing venom compounds from various Australian creatures. Science Director Kellner oversaw Valdorian researchers who were attempting to synthesize these compounds for use against the Void Swarm. Progress. Zach asked as they entered. Lisa looked up from her microscope. Promising. The box jellyfish toxin affects cell membranes in a way that might disrupt the swarm's collective structure, and the inland taipan venom has shown remarkable effects on the swarm tissue samples. The Valdorian ship in orbit had provided preserved specimens of the Void Swarm from previous encounters. These samples allowed the research teams to test Earth's natural toxins against the cosmic threat. War Chief Zorax and Commander Frank Miller entered the dome, engaged in serious conversation. Behind them came a new figure, a Valdorian wearing elaborate armor marked with symbols of high rank. This was High Commander Vertax, who had arrived from the Valdorian homeworld 3 days earlier. The room quieted as Vertax moved to the central platform. His presence commanded respect from both species. Scientists of Earth and Valdoria, Vertax began, his deep voice carrying easily through the dome. I have reviewed your progress with great interest. What you have accomplished in mere weeks exceeds our expectations. He gestured to a large display screen where data scrolled continuously. Our preliminary tests confirm that certain Earth toxins are effective against the Void Swarm in ways our weapons have never been. This alliance may save not just our worlds, but countless others. Frank stepped forward. We're pleased with the progress, but there are concerns we need to address. Speak freely, Commander Miller, Vertax said. The Void Swarm targets biological matter. Earth has more biodiversity than any planet you've encountered. If the swarm learns of Earth, we could become its primary target. Vertax nodded solemnly. Your concern is valid. That is why we propose a new strategy. Instead of bringing Earth's defenses to battlefront, we will create a perimeter of defense far from your solar system. The High Commander activated a holographic display showing star maps and fleet positions. Our ships will form a protective barrier while deploying the biological countermeasures your scientists are developing. Earth will remain hidden from the swarm's detection. Alicia studied the projected defensive line. This puts Valdorian worlds on the front line. You would bear the brunt of any counterattack. As we should, Zorax said, we came to test your worthiness as allies. Instead, we found our own worthiness tested and found wanting. Your world has taught us humility. Now we must demonstrate that we have learned this lesson. The meeting continued as details of the defensive strategy were discussed. Scientists reported on their findings, and military leaders planned deployment methods. Throughout it all, a new sense of mutual respect shaped every interaction between humans and Valdorians. Later that day, Zach found himself alone with Frank on the observation platform overlooking the research complex. When I first arrived in your world, Zach said, I believed strength was measured by size and power. I saw humans as fragile, unworthy allies. Frank waited, sensing the warrior had more to say. Now I understand what true strength is, Zach continued. It is adaptation. It is respect for dangers both large and small. It is working together to overcome what neither could face alone. Frank nodded. Earth shaped humans that way. We were never the strongest or fastest creatures here. We had to learn other kinds of strength to survive. The Void Swarm has never encountered such strength, Zach said. It consumes through brute force, overwhelming with numbers. It has never faced the subtle defenses your world has evolved. As night fell, a special ceremony was prepared. High Commander Vertax had requested a formal alliance signing under the stars. Tables were set up in the open area between the human and Valdorian sections of the camp. The red soil of the outback had been smoothed flat, and lights placed around the perimeter cast a warm glow over the gathering. Representatives from Earth's nations joined the Valdorian leadership around the tables. Documents prepared in both languages waited to be signed. These would establish not just a military alliance against the Void Swarm, but scientific cooperation, cultural exchange, and mutual defense agreements that would last for generations. Before the signing began, Vertax raised his hand for attention. There is one matter I wish to address first. He motioned to Drazak, who stepped forward carrying an ornate metal container. The warrior opened it carefully, revealing a small object inside, a perfectly preserved funnel web spider, encased in clear resin. This, Vertax announced, will be displayed in our great hall on Valdoria Prime, alongside the most significant artifacts of our history. It will remind all who see it that true strength comes in many forms, and that humility is the beginning of wisdom. He turned to face the human delegation directly. We came to your world seeking warriors. We found them, though not as we expected. Your greatest warriors are not just your soldiers, but your doctors who saved our people, your scientists who shared knowledge freely, and the countless small defenders that have protected your world for millions of years. The signing proceeded under the vast canopy of stars. Humans and Valdorians, so different in form and origin, found common purpose in protecting life throughout the galaxy. As the formal ceremonies concluded, the real work continued in the research facilities. Lisa and Kellner supervised final tests on delivery systems for the biological countermeasures. The first deployments would begin within days. Alicia found Drazak examining a collection of specimen containers. Each held a different Earth creature, a blue-ringed octopus, a box jellyfish, a cone snail, a poison dart frog, and dozens more. These will go to our home world? Drazak asked. Samples only, Alicia clarified. For research, we've learned the hard way about introducing species to new environments. Your scientists will synthesize the compounds without bringing actual creatures to your worlds. Drazak nodded approvingly. Another lesson in respect. The next morning, the first Valdorian ships departed Earth's orbit, carrying the newly developed biological weapons toward the distant front where the Void Swarm approached. Each ship contained human scientists working alongside Valdorian crews, a partnership unimaginable just weeks before. Frank, Alicia, and their team stood with Zorax and Vertax, watching the ships rise into the dawn sky. Will it be enough? Frank wondered aloud. The swarm has never encountered Earth's defenses, Zorax replied. We believe they will be effective. And if not, Alicia asked. Vertax turned to face her. Then we will adapt, together. That is what we have learned from your world. As the ships disappeared from view, Drazak stepped forward, his gaze on the brightening sky. I was once called the Unconquerable, he said quietly. Now I bear a new title among my people, Drazak the Humbled. I wear it with greater pride than my old name. He extended his massive hand, the dark mark of the spider bite clearly visible. Frank shook it without hesitation. The human hand tiny in comparison, but equal in the strength that mattered most. To unlikely allies, Frank said, and to Earth's smallest defenders, Drazak added. May they never need to defend against the swarm. In the weeks and months that followed, news came of successful deployments against the Void Swarm. The biological countermeasures worked better than expected, breaking down the swarm's collective structure and halting its advance. For the first time in decades, the threat receded rather than grew. Back on Earth, the research continued. The joint facility in the Australian outback became a permanent installation, where scientists from both worlds studied the remarkable defenses that evolution had produced over billions of years. And in the Great Hall on Valdoria Prime, visitors would pause before a small display containing a preserved spider. Many would ask why such a tiny creature held a place of honor among the greatest treasures of their civilization. The answer was always the same, because it taught us that true strength does not always come in the form we expect. Sometimes, the mightiest offender is the smallest one.